Hi. I know you're going to get the citation to Councillor Walcott about where you received your information about property values, I think it was, going down.
I can try to do that, sure.
That'd be great. I'm wondering if you could tell us where you got your information about single detached homes being the majority of homes in this city.
I didn't say they were the majority. I said they numbered in the hundreds of thousands.
Okay.
And so this is a permitted townhouse development here, right beside an RC2 property. So I think that under the new rules, there's some setback here, like maybe 4 feet, because the next door neighbor are zoned for single family dwelling. In the blanket rezoning, if he's zoned for townhouses and this is zoned for townhouses, then I don't think they need any setback from the property line here. You're looking at that that's called setback, like how close it is to the sidewalk?
I'm on the sidewalk. So there's your yard, folks. Let's get a good look at that.
Is it your proposition then that the people who live in single detached homes somehow have different values than the people who are at risk of being homeless?
I think at times those values diverge.
Could you tell me how they divert? Tell me the difference between someone who lives in a single detached home, their values, versus the values of someone who's at risk of being homeless, the 100,000 people that are at risk of being homeless. Tell me how those values diverge. Tell me how those values diverge.
Are you asking me to give you an essay on socio-political, socioeconomic theory?
Absolutely not. You said, I think their values diverge. I'm asking you.
I think they do.
How?
I think they do. I think their priorities are different.
So here's our building permit. 808R. Building Calgary's future through conserving our past. Conserving our past. Was that our past?
They're conserving this livery stable, and they're going to put units inside this livery stable. So they actually lifted this livery stable up and built footings underneath it. I believe from the plans that they showed the neighbors that this is going to be a parking garage. And
priorities are defined by values. I think people who are houseless or on the verge of houselessness have a more immediacy for their arc of need.
All right, so there's the city preserving our past. We're going to have townhouses or row houses joining the livery stable here.
They get some kind of bonus for preserving this historic livery stable.
And if we invoke Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we can get into that psychological conversation if that benefits council.
Oh, I don't need to get into that psychological conversation.
But that's the answer.
No, ma'am. I asked you what the difference in values
is where
you started talking about needs.
I don't see how, having condos in Inglewood is going to help to be affordable housing, because these are very expensive condos.
You talked about how many people are homeless. Did you know that 100,000 Calgarians are at high risk of losing housing?
The crisis alleged by Jyoti Up-Zoning recently in Chambers of there's 100,000 Calgarians on the verge of homelessness. Hard to tell how expensive units. We know that the six flexes in Inglewood will go for $4,500 a month. Oh, this is just what the doctor ordered to keep you from going homeless. Come up with $4,500 a month and you can live in vertical density Inglewood.
100,000 Calgarians are at high risk of losing housing. That's also from the Homeless Foundation.
That is, and it is very much a concerning element, but we must also address if it numbers 100,000, it still pales in number to the number of single detached family dwellings that exist and the people who own them. And the response by council needs to be proportionate.
If you look over there, these things aren't at full height yet. See that concrete wall there? It looks like the concrete wall is going to go up that much higher. Another story there.
What's the difference in their values?
Values
Tell
and
me that.
priorities are defined by needs. Full stop.
So high and narrow, that's the theme here. You can see the two concrete firewalls, and there's the width of a basic unit that's going to have its own stairwell. The stairwells, folks, are going to take up a good percentage of the living space.
And if we want to look at on a clinical, scientific, human level of how a human in various states of their happiness will prioritize values, let's just invoke Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's very clear. And I think it answers your question, ma'am.
I would say that my question is answered by the simple fact that each one of those people value having a roof over their head. That's a common value. That's a shared value. That's a social contract they share, having a roof over their head.
This property backs onto the river, so there's no laneway back there.
Okay, so this is Shane. I'm here with Art. We're here at what used to be 66 New Street Southeast. In 2016, Carra had an interest in this property. He worked through a front man, Brian Kernick of Kernick Enterprises. I say it used to be 66 because the construction going up right now, that's 66A, and beside it, this property has now been subdivided. So here's what we know. In 2016, using Kernick Enterprises as a front, Councillor Giancarlo Carra picked up this valuable property. And we also know that in March, he proposed or pushed a motion to soften existing restrictions. Now, those were called Airport Vicinity Protection Act, which prevented the subdivision that the councillor has now accomplished.
And give people choices. You know what? I'm not here to tell you how to live, and I get the sense that council's kind of trying to tell me how to live. And I don't think that's right. I think there needs to be options. I think you need to let the market speak, and the market will speak. If you build it and they don't come, don't build anymore. But if you build it and they sell out in a week, probably there's a market crunch on that, and we need to address that. Not by blanket rezoning, but annexing more land and making opportunities available for the market to decide and for people to decide how and where they want to live, not on a blanket basis as dictated by 15 people on council and their administration, with respect.
No, thank you for the respect. I greatly appreciate that.
So here we see what looks like it's going to be a garage right on the property line. And we have an RC2 property, and it's set back 4 feet from the fence line.
Can you take a minute to explain, Art, what the cinder block wall is all about?
So this, I believe, is a garage. It's going to be for a garage. And you can build a garage right up to the property line if you have a firewall.
Now, according to Brian Kernick of Kernick Enterprises, who was Carra's front in this purchase of this property, everybody knew. Carra, back in 2016, he told his neighbors, he told councillors, I wonder if this resident here in the Grey House knew there was going to be a cinder block wall right in his face.
If his neighbor was zoned RCG, and this was zoned RCG, he could build the whole house right up to the property line. Can you imagine having that right up to your property line?
I don't want to imagine it.
Thank you for the respect. I greatly appreciate that.
You know, there's a lot of complicated bylaws out there, but RC2, residential context, things must be built to fit into the tone of a neighborhood. RCG, the house could go up to the property line. And then there's HGO, that's going to allow buildings to be 12 meters high. The point we're making here is that blanket up-zoning is going to be more of this, and more of this.
RC2 allows for 10-meter height. So this building here is probably 10 meters. So imagine another 2 meters on top of that.
You made a comment as well,
Sarcasm
sir.
is not reciprocating
you were not
me.
asked a question.
But I was
were not
treated
asked.
fairly sarcastically by her worship, and I would appreciate that I am treated with the respect of my hours and presence on a Friday night, the time I've spent watching these proceedings,
Mr.
the research
Cox.
I've done, and the
Mr.
writing I've
Cox.
done.
Look, I've got this. Mr. Cox, you just stated.
In 23D district, it's it's going to be a 6-story, 23 meters building.
Yeah, so we're on the main drag, 9th Avenue, southeast in Inglewood, and there's some old buildings here, blue and brick colored, and so a maximum building height of 23 meters, an increase from the current maximum of 20 meters. So again, wherever we're at, whether we're talking about residential or commercial zoning, the plan is just, let's keep it up, keep going higher and higher.
Higher and higher, denser and denser. The city just wants density.
Look, I've got this. Mr. Cox, you just stated publicly that you feel that for some reason people who are facing homelessness have different values and that we all make choices.
They have.
Pardon
That's
me
not
for
what I
being
said.
sarcastic.
Any thoughts on how the Teflon Don, the residential property developer Wiz, also known as City Council Giancarlo Carra, managed to overcome the Airport Vicinity Protection Act and subdivide his property?
City council repealed or applied to the federal government to take it out of here. This is really on the edge of the airport vicinity protection, especially right here. This is really on the edge, and this is in a noise contour. It's the very edge of the noise contour. So they convinced the federal government to move this back, which would also allows for secondary suites in this area of Inglewood, which the airport vicinity did not allow for because you couldn't densify your property.
So to back up, here's what we know from 2016. This is the year that the councillor got himself a foothold on this property, a financial interest in it. He did that, and for 5 years thereafter, he failed to disclose this as an asset in his asset disclosure as a councillor. 5 years in a row, he didn't do it. But we know that by March of 2016, he had an intention to subdivide this lot because that was when the councillor was pushing a motion to soften what Art has just been talking about, the Airport Vicinity Protection Act. And we also know that his frontman, Brian Kernick of Kernick Enterprises, by June he withdrew an application because of the very poor optics.
Pardon
That's
me
not
for
what I
being
said.
sarcastic. That's what you said.
Well, it's really not what I said, and if we can read
I have
it back,
another question for you.
it's really not what I said, and if we can read
I have
it back.
another question for you.
Can we finish this one first, Your
I
Worship?
have a question for you.
Worship, can we finish the first
This is
question
not a
first?
question. And as a chair,
Who knows, maybe even he's going to put a laneway house here because there is no lane here. This is his only. The front of his house is really like the back of his house because of the situation of this lot. Yeah, who knows? We can't see the plans. For some reason, the building permit isn't posted on this fence, just like every other project I've ever seen. That orange sign over there should have the building permit number on it, and you could actually go and look at his plans and see what he was going to do here.
I am here as a volunteer. I am here as a citizen. I've been in this city for
Mr.
50 plus
Cox.
years. I wish to be treated with respect.
Mr. Cox.
So non-transparency, non-transparency, and non-transparency.
If you continue without being asked a question, you will find yourself not getting asked more questions. It is simple as that.
The context, he's a Roberts. Maybe he's your brother.
This cousin were probably related to my great-great-great-grandmother Kernahan, who left Ireland during the Potato Famine.
This application is being reviewed against applicable policies of the Inglewood Area Redevelopment Plan and Municipal Development Plan. Every neighborhood had a redevelopment plan. So the citizens could say, where they wanted their neighborhood, how they wanted their neighborhood to be developed. And neighbors, like areas like this, Inglewood and Ramsey, where we live, just across the street, they said,
Calgary Transit is asking us to vacate this spot.
Are you aware that the number of single detached homes has gone down almost 27% in the last 5 years?
I can tell you also why that's happened, Mayor.
I don't need to know that. I don't need to know that.
in the redevelopment plan for a neighborhood, it has areas that are single family, it has areas like this main street with multifamily developments, that kind of thing. And you say in your plan, where would you like the density to go? Well, it makes sense to have it on this main street. That's not a problem, right? But with this blanket rezoning, you might as well throw away every single redevelopment plan in the city because they have areas of just single family. Every plan has areas where they have single family areas. Under a blanket rezone, there are no areas for single family dwellings.
So in other words, whatever concerns, and there were many that we've had about municipal development plan, and then she cleverly changed the name to local area planning, but the substance remained the same. Whatever those concerns were, up-zoning, blanket up-zoning, is going to make that far worse.
Well, it takes the footing right out of every redevelopment plan in the city, because the footing was single-family dwellings with areas to have multifamily dwellings and commercial and whatever else. But now, when you change the base zoning, blanket base rezoning, not only is it lazy planning, it throws every single neighborhood under the bus with their aspirations for the kind of neighborhood that they wanted.
So when you take out that basis, we no longer have a guarantee of a mix of residential home styles, choice, the diversity that Mr. Cox mentioned during his debate with the mayor.
We need to have diversity of housing opportunities and availabilities in the city of Calgary that are not single-minded in that we need to blanket rezone so we can stick whatever in wherever we want to. We've seen the example of Marda Loop. That's worked out so well. It hasn't.
And their argument is you can still build a single family house in a multifamily zoning.
You can do it, but they're going to tax and user fee you to death.
So, they're discouraging this.
Mayor Gondek, do you have another question?
I have one question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Cox, you indicated that council has sometimes been wasteful in their spending. You mentioned this idea of money that we've spent on bids. Are you at all concerned about the amount of money and resources that we spend through the time that's spent going through individual RCG applications?
I do not have concerns about that whatsoever because each applicant needs to be treated on a case-by-case basis as an individual, as the council would have the people presenting and joining council to be treated as individuals. Everyone's got a story, just like the people who are houseless. The people who are not houseless have a story as well, and they need to be heard, and they need to perceive to be heard. And to blanket up zone takes away that opportunity for those people to necessarily be heard. And I'm standing here today before you, worship, to tell you that those people need to be heard regardless of the resources. If we're going to talk about the resources we expend on frivolous things, that is very far down the list in terms of the frivolities of the spendings of this council.
Thank you for your time.
So, this is where the building permit and the contact information for the contractor should go in case the neighbors had some issue with what was going on this building site. Then they could contact someone.
Well, it looks to me that once again, Carra or one of his associates forgot to fill out the paperwork.
They should at least have the building permit here somewhere.
Building permit number. There's another snafu. Another snafu.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time.